ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. You got me? Are we working now? Is this working? It's working sporadically. Kind of like cups. They work sporadically. How about now? Are we good?
Nope.
Not good. We tested this earlier. This one we did. Yeah, his is working. 1, 2, 1, 2. Well, I'm pretty loud. I'm very loud, actually. Notice that. I'm loud. Yeah, just some bad connection over there somewhere. In any event, while they're working on that. One more time. One more time. Stand by for Victor, Victor. Call for clearance, Clarence. All right, now it is off. So we're about out of time. All right, I'll just be loud. Okay, you guys can hear me. If you can't hear me, so you're all here to figure out who is going to win Game 6. I don't know. Well, let me ask you a question. Who makes the rules of baseball? They've been handed down from who to who? Who? Someone said it over here.
National Baseball.
Yeah, and who? There's a head of the National Baseball League. There's a commissioner. Is there another one of these? Because we're going to need 2.
You can use that one for now.
All right. 1, 2. How's that? 1, 2. 1, 2. How about now? All right. Forget amplification. I'm from New Jersey. You guys can hear me. All right? Keep working and we'll figure it out. There's a commissioner, and he sets up the rules. Now, obviously, baseball is an arbitrary game, right? I mean, rules could have been different. But there's got to be, if there are rules, there's got to be a rule giver. If players are obligated to play a certain way, then there's got to be somebody to be obligated to. And there's got to be a purpose to the game, right? If there's no purpose to the game, then there can't be any rules. But since there is a purpose to the game, to score more runs than the other team, then there's a certain way to play the game. There's an objective way to play the game, right? I mean, if a player thinks that the objective of the game is to hit more foul balls than the other team, that wouldn't be objectively right. It's to score more runs. Just keep that in mind as we move forward. That there's got to be a purpose and there's got to be a rule giver if you're going to have some sort of system that everybody can agree on, and there can be an objective to the game, and at the end of the game you can say, okay, this team won and this team lost. All right? There's got to be a purpose and there's got to be a rule giver. Now, I was in South Dakota, invited to go there in February of this past year. Why I agreed to go to South Dakota in February is another story, but I went. And I was at a church, and we had a series of evenings where I was going through the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist material, where we try and give an argument for Christianity from the ground up. And during the Q&A on the second night, there were a couple of young men in their early 20s. They came up to the microphone, and they expressed a lot of skepticism about God and what I was saying. Now, this is not uncommon. If you call something I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, then atheists are going to show up, which is fine. I hope there's some atheists here tonight. And so it's great that we can do Q&A, and if you have a question or you want to make a comment, that's fine. That's what this is here for. But in any event, they expressed a lot of skepticism. The final night I was there, about a 50-year-old man got up to the microphone, and he had a question written on 2 pieces of paper, and he began to read the question, but almost as soon as he started, he broke down crying. He could not finish the question. So I came off the platform, I walked down to him, and he handed me his 2 sheets of paper, and he just said, read it, read it. So I walked back up to the platform, I'm trying to digest this 2-page question, and when I got back up to the platform, I realized that this man was upset for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, he and his family just recently discovered that his daughter had been sexually molested by a male friend of the family who was in his 40s, from the time she was age 4 to the time she was aged 14, for 10 years, right in their own home. The second reason this man was upset was because the two young men who were there the night before were his sons. And they used to be Christians, and now they're atheists. Because they said, if there is a good God, why would he allow this to happen to our sister? There is no God. In fact, one of them left Catholic seminary. He was studying to be a priest, and after he learned what happened to his sister, he said, that's it, there is no God. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves, and what this man was asking, and his two sons were asking, is, where is God? If there is a good God, where is he? Is this thing working or not? No. It's not? Can you hear me?
That one's working.
This one's working. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
It's not.
Can you hear me now? Yeah, you can really hear me now. Okay. So the question that's being asked is, if there is a good God, where is he? Why did he allow this to happen? And you're sitting in here right now. Everyone in here has been scarred by evil in some sense. Some of you are just Ohio State students in the sense you've only lived 20 or so years, but you've already been scarred. Some of you have had your parents split up. I don't care how old you are. When a divorce occurs, you're scarred. I'd be scarred right now, and I'm almost 55 years old if my parents got divorced. Some of you are scarred because you were bullied in grammar school or high school. Some of you are scarred because you didn't live up to what your father said you ought to live up to, or what your mother said you ought to live up to. They said you're never going to amount to anything. Some of you are scarred because you've been sick, or your parents, one of your parents or your siblings have been sick, and they've died. Some of you have been scarred because the amplification doesn't work. Whatever it is, there's evil out there. Can we all agree on there's evil? And if there is a good God, why is there such a thing as evil? And not only that, but this God that the Christians worship, he's evil as well. Why would you worship a being that was as evil as the Christian God? As Richard Dawkins so eloquently puts it, Richard Dawkins, maybe the most famous atheist in the world, wrote in the God Delusion this about the God of the Old Testament. He said, the God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all of fiction, jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent fool. And those are his good qualities. Now, if you just take a cursory reading of the Old Testament, how can you disagree with Dawkins? He's right. If you just take a cursory reading of the Old Testament, you don't understand the context. And if this being did exist, why would you worship him? In fact, I ask atheists on college campuses all the time, if Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? And some will say no. Why? Because of this. Why would I worship a being like that? Why would you? Well, here's my thesis today. What if your best arguments to doubt God show that he actually exists? What if your best arguments to doubt God show that he actually exists? Evil is certainly one of them. Why should we believe in a good God? I actually think that this is actually an argument for God, not an argument against God. But I'll have to explain myself. In fact, here's what we're going to do today. If God, why evil? And the first thing we're going to talk about is, does evil disprove God? Because it's commonly thought that it does. Evil disproves God. Secondly, we're going to try and deal with the question, what's the purpose of evil? If evil does not disprove God, then what's the purpose of it? Why would God allow it to continue? I mean, if He's really out there, why is He allowing all this evil? And then finally, what's God's solution to evil? Now, this presentation comes with a caveat, big caveat, here it is. Evil is not just a problem for the head, it's also a problem for the heart. So right now, if you're sitting in this room and you're going through evil and suffering right now, what I'm about to say may not resonate with you. Because I'm going to give more of the philosophical arguments related to this topic rather than the pastoral presence that you might need. If you're going through suffering now, you don't need a philosopher, you need a pastor. But let me say this. I think the first step toward recovery when you're going through suffering is to intellectually know that there is a God and He has a reason for you going through what you're going through, even if you don't know it or will never find out the reason. That's the first step. But I just want to warn you, if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to really feel better after this presentation because I'm going through it. No, you might not. Okay, this is more about the intellectual side rather than the heart side. You guys with me on that? In fact, there are two ways to answer a question. Someone can come up to the microphone and say, if God, why evil? And you can give a philosophical answer. And that may be a sound answer, but the problem is, if the person who comes up to the microphone says, if God, why evil? And the reason the person's asking the question is because her baby died 2 weeks ago. The answer I give ain't going to work. With that in mind, let's start with, does evil disprove God? All right? You guys ready to go?
Yes.
All right. Now, I know you're worried about watching the World Series. Some of you are. Let me put it this way. By the time we get done, it'll be the second inning. Okay? The other night, I'm flipping between the news, the Cowboys and the Eagles, and the Cubs and the Indians. And I went away from the World Series for 15 minutes, and I came back and I go, it's still the top of the eighth? You ever notice that? Here's a pitch. Sorry, got to readjust this stuff. Another pitch, sorry, got to readjust. Hold on, that game is taking too long. You guys agree? Delay in baseball is evil. Yeah, when I was growing up, they got anything to play the game in 2 hours and 10 minutes. Now it's 4 hours. All right, enough ranting about baseball. All right. Does evil disprove God? Let me ask you a question. Let's suppose you go on a long hike somewhere out in the forest and your cell phone goes down and you've got no way to get home. You get lost. All you have is a magnetic compass to get back. So you take out that magnetic compass and instead of pointing to magnetic north, the magnetic compass always points to you. No matter where you go, it keeps pointing to you. You go, look, I know where I am. I want to know where north is so I can get out of here. How helpful would that compass be if it just always pointed to you? It wouldn't be helpful at all. Here's the problem. Many of us, Christians, non-Christians, we somehow think the compass points to us. We think that if things aren't going our way, or if we're experiencing evil or pain or suffering, somehow either God doesn't exist or He's forgotten about me. You know something that I just happened to realize recently? I hadn't thought about it this way, but do you realize that whether God exists or not, you are not the center of the universe? I'm not the center of the universe either. Why do I always think the compass points to me? The compass doesn't point to me. Now, where does the moral compass point? Is there a true north to morality, or is this all just a matter of opinion? We're going to get into that tonight. In fact, when we talk about the question, does evil disprove God, we've got to put it in context. Let's make a two-column chart and talk about the arguments for and against God. Now, I'm going to put a bunch of arguments on the left here that says God does exist. What I mean by God is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, moral, personal, intelligent creator who creates all things and sustains all things. I'm not talking about the flying spaghetti monster. Okay? I'm not talking about Thor or Zeus. I'm talking a God that transcends the created order. And what is the evidence that this being exists? I'm going to list it here. I don't have time to go through the evidence. It's all in the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist book if you want more details on that. But I'm just going to list it here, okay? The beginning of the universe. If the universe had a beginning, then it's whatever created the universe. If space, matter, and time had a beginning, whatever created it must be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial. The fine-tuning of the universe shows that the creator of the universe is intelligent. The information found in DNA, the four-letter genetic alphabet that we all have, we have a genome that's 3.5 billion letters long. All of that data is in the right order. Seems like if a message exists, there must be a messenger out there. Life itself seems to be the product of intelligence. Consciousness and free will. Our very ability to reason and have intelligence seems to have required an intelligent being out there. The very laws of nature themselves by which we do science. Why are they so orderly and precise? In fact, tomorrow, we're going to be talking about this in a lot more detail when we talk about why science points to God. I know that sounds credible. People think science points away from God. I think it actually points toward God. Also, objective morality, which we'll talk about here. And then Old Testament prophecy and the resurrection, I think, shows that Christian theism is true. Now, again, I don't have time to give you any of the evidence behind this, but I think I can make a fairly strong case that this points to the God of the Bible. Now, what do we have on the other side? Perhaps the strongest argument on the other side is evil. In fact, Augustine, many years ago, in the 400s AD, had a problem. The problem was this. God created all things. Evil is a thing. Therefore, God created evil. And if this being is the standard of righteousness and truth and goodness, how can he have created evil? Then Augustine realized there was a problem with the second premise of the argument. Evil is a thing. What did he realize? He realized that's not a good premise. Because evil is not a thing. Evil is a lack in a good thing. Evil is like rust in a car. If you take all the rust out of the car, you got a better car. If you take all the car out of the rust, you got nothing. Evil is like a wound in an arm. If you take the wound out of the arm, you got a better arm. If you take all the arm out of the wound, you got nothing. Evil is like a rot in a tree. If you take all the rot out of the tree, you got a better tree. If you take all the tree out